Hey guys, I've had a lot of really deep, revolutionary revelations over the past few years, for most of my life. But I've spent my life applying my high level of intelligence to learning conceptual things, um, philosophical things, intellectual things, spiritual things, studying ancient knowledge, translating ancient scriptures, um, a lot of occult things, which occult just means hidden. So it's like the fringe, rare things in the world, the magical things in the world. I have spent a lot of time studying those type of things, symbolism, and through and also having my own experiences in life with helping people and having my own struggles. I'm a very diverse person that has never been able to live typically, survive typically. Um, Basically, the typical collective of humans and the way that they attempt to live does not work for me. It doesn't work for a lot of people. And I have come to some important conclusions, a lot of important conclusions. I've written several books on the subject, which I have yet to publish, um, about ideas that could help bring atypical people, as in non typical people or diverse people, into an ability to be able to sustain their lives and live in a world where many of these people are struggling, suffering, and having difficulty to the point of not even being able to survive, and many of them are dying. And there's a lot of people that could be saved, and what it would require is a means of living where they are allowed to live how they need to live with their diverse needs, and supportive communities where people can accept the diversities. And even though I know a lot of people want to focus on the positives of what the internet has brought to us, which does exist as far as being able to find people and share information, there's a lot of negatives that the internet has brought to us recently, especially with censorship and algorithms. Those algorithms are favoring towards the more typical, and it's causing people that are more diverse to end up with less support. And it's very much a caste system, and we need to get away from all caste systems, and we need to stop people need to stop generalizing, and realize, and they need to start realizing that things are more complex. um, Judgment is very bad at this point in history, generalization, and a lot of and it has been for a long time, and almost always, as long as there's been modern society, a lot of not allowing people to live diversely. And although in ancient times you would be surprised to learn that actually disabled and diverse people in a lot of tribal communities were more well supported emotionally and mentally, and supported by care, um, more so than they are now in a lot of cases. So there's a lot of people falling through the cracks because we don't have sufficient systems of support for disabled and limited and diverse people. We don't have sufficient means of recovering people's lives for diverse people. And a lot of people that are disabled are not able to get diagnosed, not able to get disability. Um, a lot of people that are diverse are not accepted by communities, or not accepted by their families, by the people they have in their lives, which means they need to find new communities and new people in their lives. And I'm going to start an all encompassing project that is about supporting these people that have fallen through the cracks, because many of them are very capable, many of them are very talented, many of them have a lot of skills, many of them are self-motivated, hardworking, and yet many of these people end up with no support, no communities, and no way to get themselves out from the bottom, because as much as everybody, a lot of people may not want to face the fact that our medical system and our government does not actually provide a valid way of recovering your life. And even for working class people, um, our our society, the main part of our society, does not provide a way to sustain yourself in a healthy manner. And a lot of these ideas could apply to perfectly healthy people too that are working class. But this is mostly going to be focused on the people that the diverse people that are falling through the cracks, the disabled people that are capable and could thrive, could have a sustainable survival, um, that are overlooked, especially now because humanitarianism is not nearly as focused on disabled people and recovering homeless people and things like that as much as it used to be. Um, and addiction is a big part of that too. And there's a lot of judgment towards diversity because people are on a short wavelength and they're not allowing themselves to receive complex information or try to find out the complexities of how people work. Everything, a lot of thought processes are on a short wavelength, especially on the internet. People are rushing through life, and that causes a lot of generalization, which means that people are not seeing situations and people in their lives for what they really are and are just quickly categorizing it. And that's causing a lot of people to not be seen for who they are. And it's causing a lot of people to be misjudged, and judgment just shouldn't exist. Um, it really shouldn't. And I know we have to make healthy judgments to some extent in our lives as we're navigating through, when we decide who we're going to have in our life, who we're not going to have in our life, um, what decisions to make of who to work with, who to live with, who to have relationships with. Of course, we have to make judgment calls, but people are rushing their judgment calls and not going out of their way to really try to get to know each other and understand situations, because a lot of people are having to really struggle to meet their survival needs, and that's causing a lot of suffering and trauma for people who are not having the amount of time they need to process, or not making the amount of time they need to process. And it needs to become a priority, because you would be surprised that if you actually take the time to process and conclude things and feel and stop running away from the darkness and your pain, then and being allowed to express it and feel it and not be um, shut down for it, and all these things are important. And actually we would be a lot more productive if we were processing those energies more, and we would be able to think more clearly, and we would be able to have a lot more focus on our lives. Um, Lack of body awareness causes disease, and there's just a lot of things going on that are causing people to not be focused on truly living a healthy lifestyle. And so the working class caste people, a lot of them have become more judgmental because they think they're not receiving the things they need in life. So there is a false program going around where it's then okay to think that other people, it's okay for other people to not receive what they need. And the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems I see is that if you can work a job and drive a car, you have a lot more capability of manifesting in your life than somebody who cannot do those things. There are disabled people who cannot work a normal job. There are people who cannot drive or don't have means of transportation. There are places that don't have buses and so on. And if you do have the ability to work a job and drive a car, then you have the ability to manifest to a level higher than someone who cannot do those things, a disabled person, per se, a diverse person, whatever you want to call it. And the people that are sustaining their survival to some extent, although it may not be fully healthy for them, are not allowing the disabled people to have their diverse needs because they cannot have them. Well, I don't have that. Well, if we say that everyone is not allowed to have something if somebody else does not have it, then the disabled people could look at the able-bodied people and say, well, I don't have the ability to drive and I don't have the ability to work a job, so you are not allowed to have that either. And it's the same as a able-bodied person saying to a disabled person, you don't get a full night's sleep, you don't get processing time, you're not allowed to have lack of emotional interference in your life or a special diet or whatever the disabled person needs. We have to start being the change we want to see in the world in a way where we are willing to give people things that we can't have. And I know when a lot of people hear that, they're going to get triggered. I'm not talking about elite, rich people who have way more than everybody else. I'm talking about a disabled person who cannot sustain their survival being given what they need to sustain their survival, which may include things that you would like to have that you cannot have. So that's true equality, is getting everybody to a point where they can sustain their survival and looking at the people who are not able to sustain their survival, the capable, motivated, highly skilled ones that are really trying and deserve to be able to just be given what they need to sustain their survival. We need to focus on that. And the generalization that all people that are not sustaining their survival are somehow at fault for that is a stigmatization of abuse that needs to go away. People there, we do not live in a society that provides valid life recovery methods for people to get back on their feet when they're struggling for diverse people. There are very cold systems, social systems in place, and you might be lucky to live in somewhere where there's more than that. I'm sure there's this, that, and the other thing, and there's communities here and there. But overall, there are a ton of people dying on the streets, and of those people, many of them could recover. Many of them could do what I call ascend, or be like a phoenix rising. And instead of just deciding that everyone that is struggling and suffering is at fault for their own personal shortcomings, I think that it's important to realize that everything is not just about mindset. Although mindset is important, you don't want to have a delusional mindset and consistently tell yourself things are possible, which are quite limited in our physical reality, only to be continually let down. You want to have a realistic outlook on reality and be able to try to obtain things and accomplish things which actually are possible, because that serves completion, which feeds your body dopamine and regulates your body functions and makes you healthier, and is something that you cannot live without. So having an overly positive mindset can be destructive, because if you are constantly believing things are going to happen and then they don't happen, well, everybody will say, then don't have an expectation. Psychologically, neurologically, you don't have the capability of not accomplishing things over and over again without it affecting your dopamine levels. There isn't a mindset that you can put yourself in that makes that not happen. There are levels. Of course, you can dwell on things and make the letdown experience harder on yourself. You can do everything you can to try to overcome your letdowns when you try to accomplish something and it doesn't go through. Inevitably, those things are going to happen in life. You're going to have to learn to cope with it. But the current New Age philosophies are very much overlooking neurological fact, and psychology is a philosophy, and anything that is a philosophy is not a fact. However, there are physiological things in our brains and bodies that have to do with chemicals and nerves and regulation that are actually fact, and that there's only so much you can do to compensate for not having control over your life, not being able to make decisions, not being able to accomplish the things you set goals on. And the idea that we can just keep getting knocked down and keep getting up infinitely is scientifically not true. And it's unhealthy to think that way. Instead, what we need to do is we need to be able to make sure that ourselves and other people are capable of setting goals that they can accomplish, and especially if that goal is sustaining their own survival. And the more often that we are allowed to have an accomplishment where we receive dopamine, the more healthy our bodies and minds will get. It allows us to heal injuries. It allows us to heal illnesses, and all those things are scientific neurology. They're a fact. And if your dopamine levels get too low, um, your heart will dysregulate, and eventually you will die. And this is something that is happening to more and more people. And those people cannot just think their way out of it. They cannot just meditate or pray their way out of it. They need to actually be able to have control over their life and controlled outcomes and accomplish goals that they set. So if the goal that someone is setting is to be able to sustain their own survival, we cannot think of that as a selfish goal. If someone needs to focus on just themselves for a while to get their life together before they're able to include caring about anyone else in their life, that's not selfish, because we need to be able to take care of ourselves first and foremost to be able to eventually give to a community or the world. And a lot of these things are being stigmatized in the New Age philosophical and spiritual communities. People are deciding that philosophies are fact when they aren't. And I'm going to talk about actual neurological facts, and how they actually connect to many ancient tribal, ritualistic, and spiritual ways that have been heritages that have been nearly lost in our society. And we can bring those two things together and bring back truth, actual truth, truth in the shared universe, not individual truth. And even if your individual truth has a million people that agree with you, it's still not universal truth. Universal truths of ethics are things that absolutely do apply to everyone, and there are not a lot of them. They're very important ones, but there are not a lot of them. And if you find those universal ethical truths that actually do apply to all people, those things will have neurological science to back them. And most of the things that you're reading on the internet or seeing in a video or a post on the internet are opinions and philosophy and psychology, and all of that stuff is just an opinion. And even if you're reading an article written by a doctor, um, a lot of those things are still propaganda. And almost all of the articles that are easy to find and easy to read on the internet are interpretations of science, rather than direct science itself. You have to actually know how to read real science, which takes a lot of patience. You have to be able to look up all these different terminologies. It's it's not exciting. It's takes a lot of time, and it's not worded in a way that the general public would be able to understand, because it has to become complex. And the general public, like I said, avoids complexity for the most part. So if you want to actually learn truths, you have to read real science. And that takes a lot of patience. You're not going to be able to just skim through it in 5 minutes and learn something. And people are interpreting the science, and those interpretations may be wrong, they may be right, they're theories. And if you're reading actual conclusive science, that has actually gone through experimental processes and come to conclusions of statistic or whatever, when those conclusions are factual. So you can, and then from there you can piece things together yourself. So that's really the only way you can get real information off of the internet in a scientific manner. Most of the things we're reading are up for debate, and we need to realize that. And then so when we're taking the vast majority of the information that is not factual, and then it's, and because it's being we're taking, okay, here's real science, which has to be non-biased, which means it can't be funded by a company that wants that conclusion. If they want a certain conclusion, it's bias. So even within that um, level of the research level, you even have to be careful of the bias conclusions there. So you have to narrow it down. Then you have the interpretation, which is all the articles that everybody is reading, which are just theories. And then it goes through that filter. And, like telephone, you're losing information every time. And then people are reading all these articles, and then they're making posts and videos. Now we're at a level that's so far away from fact that we can't claim it to be anywhere near truth. It's a perspective, it's an opinion. And many of those perspectives and opinions are damaging the ability for diverse people to be able to explain their complex realities, because people are generalizing everything. Because once we're at this level over here of the fourth rung of interpretation that I was talking about, we've gone through all these different levels of bias. People want things to be true. And a lot of that, we manifest truths because we want them to be true. And so when you're scrolling through social media, that's nowhere near levels of truth. But if you find something that affirms something you already thought or felt or read, then you'll think it's true. If it has 1 million likes, you'll think it's true. And that makes people feel a level of community with shared thoughts. And a lot of that's good. But there is also the fact that people jump on the bandwagon for the same idea And that idea might actually be closed-minded. That idea might actually be shutting out other people with different diverse ideas. And if there ever is an idea that is seen as fact when it's philosophy, it's already become corrupt. And if it doesn't allow people to have different ideas and different lifestyles than that idea, then it becomes oppression, um, becomes closed-minded, and therefore it's no longer a revolutionary idea, which all these spiritual quote unquote gurus online or influencers want. They want to think that they're changing the world in a positive way, but if we're just having a bunch of people group together and say this philosophy is now fact, we are not going to contemplate other philosophies on this subject. It's no different than any other type of indoctrination that has gone on in our world, whether we're talking about governmental or religious, that has oppressed people from being able to be diverse and be themselves, which is, throughout history caused a lot of people to um, get sacrificed, whether directly or not, through violence or not. People that get left behind, people who fall through the cracks, people that are not allowed to exist. And I know that right now a lot of you want to say there's always a way, but sometimes that way is getting more people to accept diversity, because as communal beings, we are required to sustain our survival in ways that involve other people. It doesn't matter, even if you take it all the way down to putting seeds in the ground and growing plants. If you were going to eat those plants yourself, and you would have to have a piece of property, you would probably have to pay property tax on that. You would therefore have to have some level of trade. No matter how basic you take it down to, sustaining your survival requires communication and connection to other people. And a lot of people feel like they have to hide their true lifestyle. They have to hide their truths. They have to hide who they are in order to survive, because people will exile them. People will stop doing business with them, stop supporting them, stop being in their lives, because they have diverse lifestyles. And that, to me, is the ultimate evil in the world. And this is what needs to stop, is expecting people to agree with you. People don't need to agree with you. If people are not tangibly, directly affecting the survival of another being, they need to be allowed to be however they are, no matter how different it is. And we need to not be offended by that, or we are not living in a level of true unity and equality. We need to let people have things we cannot have, that cannot sustain their own survival. And a lot of people that are working class deserve more than they have too. But saying that the people who can't survive are not allowed to receive the things they survive isn't going to help. And it's difficult because, for the most part, diverse people are seen as diverse people who are struggling and not able to maintain their survival are often seen as fraudulent, because people don't want to face the fact that we don't actually have valid rehabilitative systems in our world. And people are holding on to that, so they don't want to believe that the medical system will not help you. They don't want to believe that the social systems and government will not help you. They don't want to believe that it's not possible for somebody to get off the streets, or it's not possible for somebody to get disability funding. It's not possible for somebody to get a diagnosis. It's not possible for somebody to get a job or find a way to survive. They don't want to believe that. It shakes them to the core. And I think that's the most important thing that people face, is that yes, it is true that there are not systems in place, and a lot of people cannot, no matter how hard they try, no matter how positive they think, it is not physically possible unless they have a connection in a community, and more people need to open their minds so that those connections can become more possible. People die, animals die, things go extinct, planets explode, things end, and we are not invincible. And if the more you can face that vulnerability, the more realistic of an outlook you can have on life. So that's why I'm going to start this project. And today, after all of that intro, I'm going to talk about transmutation, uh, energetic transmutation, emotional transmutation. Transmutation is something that has been very much overlooked in our society. And like I said, everybody's getting so busy trying to survive and getting used to these short wavelengths. And a lot of people are addicted to the serotonin and dopamine that they're being fed by social media or other media or surface level interactions, drugs, addicting chemicals in food. People are getting these little lifts, these little what's the word for it? They're getting these rewards. They're getting these mental rewards of these chemicals by doing things that are not really productive. They're not really important. And it's causing people to act more uh, people, like addicted people. Especially, like, a lot of people don't know that the social media affects your brain in the same way that a narcotic drug does. So and people are going to it when they can't fulfill their actual productive needs in life, and entertainment and distraction and surface level interactions and all these things has become way too important. And a lot of us need to refocus a lot of people need to refocus their lives into actually being productive in a way that helps sustain their survival and their health, and allowing other people to do that. And that's a big part of why everybody is, if you're in an addictive mindset where you're going to your phone to get these dopamine and serotonin rushes all the time, it's going to make you more likely to look away from things that make you uncomfortable, look away from things that are difficult. And transmutation very much is about going into the darkness and the vulnerability and facing it so that you can bring the light into the darkness, because the brightest light shines from the darkest places. And we need to go into that. We actually need to feel our pain to get rid of our pain. And you can't be oppressed when you're feeling your pain to get rid of your pain. You have to become in awareness of your body, of your mind, of your heart, of your feelings, of your thoughts, and they need to be allowed to flow out. This has been proven on a scientific level as well, for cancer patients and trauma patients, that if they are allowed to have their thoughts and feelings without someone stopping it or telling them it's not okay, or not being allowed to process through it. Sometimes you can do that on your own, and sometimes you need to share that with another person, especially if the other person is involved in the situation. You might need to share that with them to prevent it from happening again. You might need to share that with them just so that you don't feel alone, and that might be part of the healing. And there's no knowing when you're going to have to share it or do it alone. And processing puts you into a low vibration, feeling your sadness, feeling your trauma, feeling your injuries that those things cause. Because if you experienced a large amount of adrenaline and cortisol in your life, then it damaged your body, it damaged your nerves, your mind, your psyche. Physical damage happens from being forced outside of what we can handle and being in a fight flight mode, which is meant to be for survival in extreme situations, which are meant to be rare. And if you stay in those states for a long period of time, people get used to running on adrenaline and cortisol, and then they think that's normal. And it's even gotten to the point where it's generational at this point. Mascot, be quiet. Sorry, my cat's meowing. It's to the point where it's the injuries from not being allowed to process, feel, and live our diverse lifestyles have been inherited. The diseases have been inherited. The living outside of the consciousness of the energy of our body has been inherited. And I personally come from a long line of oppressed Native American people who were not allowed to live their diverse lifestyles, who could not just work normal jobs like everybody else. And they all died young. They all died with diseases. And I was born into a situation where my father was very intelligent and I inherited his extremely high intellect. And because of that, I was put in a savior position where I was meant to uh, meant to be able to be so successful that I would be able to save my family. That didn't end up happening because I also was oppressed out of being able to live my diverse way of life, because I have an extremely sensitive nervous system and I cannot handle um, the levels of disconnection, stress, negativity that a working class person is required to endure in our current society, in modern times. And so they all died young. And I have realized over the last couple days, finally, though I've realized this other times before, I've come to a deeper conclusion about it, that shamanic transmutation and psychological processing and the neurological facts that back all that stuff up needs to be brought together. Science and energetic awareness or spirituality need to be brought together. The past and the present need to be brought together in that way to bring back these healing methods as being something that is acceptable in our society, something that um, is part of our society, something that is not frowned upon. Because as of right now, um, there is a historical thing happening that has happened in ancient cultures before, where survival becomes harder and people are overly focusing on the positive high vibration energy and unwilling to go into the lower vibrational energy in the darkness. Low vibrational darkness is being seen as bad. High vibrational energy and positivity is being seen as good. And yet we live in a reality where both of those polarizations are required for all of existence. So it's naive and it's ignorant, and both positive and negative extreme vibrations that are on the ends of the spectrum of our physical reality and what our bodies can handle and what our minds can handle. When we're expanding, we're pushing it in both directions. You can't just push it in one direction, that it will become unbalanced. And when it becomes unbalanced, some sort of destruction will happen. That's physics. That's science again. So, in transmutation, okay, before I go into that, let me explain that whether it's low vibrational energy or high vibrational energy, if it's sudden, if it's intense, if you're not allowed to gradually go into it, if it's a frequency far different from where you're at, whether you're aware of it or not, it's going to hurt you. An extremely different vibration from where you're at suddenly causes cellular damage, nerve damage, damage to your psyche, damage to your heart, scrambles your mind. It doesn't matter if you're in a state of dysfunction, stress, illness, sadness. You might be trying to cover that up by forcing yourself to be in a higher vibration. Those lower vibrations are still inside of you. You can't just put yourself in a different mindset and they go away. If you're tired, you need to sleep. If you're hungry, you need to eat. If you're unprocessed, you need to process. If you're unhealed, you need to heal. If you're injured, you need to heal. And putting on a mask of this other vibration to get through the day is causing harm to your body to some extent. And if someone comes and has a completely different vibration from you, it doesn't matter whether it's high or low. If they're expecting you to adapt into that vibration, that will cause you harm. If it's sudden, if it's intense, high or low, it will cause you harm. And if you are not going into the darkness, into the low vibrations and processing those things by allowing yourself to think and feel them without limitation, you don't have to meet anybody else's standards when you're doing that. That is shamanic transmutation healing. Now there's also the light side of things with that, but I'm focusing on the part that's very much being neglected in our current society. I hope that I will discover when I go to South America or something that there's still a lot of people doing transmutation. It's in my heritage. I grew up raised by the part of my family that was Native American, and it wasn't told that it was being taught or told that it was a philosophy. It was just the way that we are with the Lakota and Oglala tribes. I'm other types of Native American too, but that's who I grew up with. And it just was known to connect to people, to allow people to express themselves, to not control how people express themselves, to stay up all night or for multiple days and go through these rituals where we share compassion with each other, allow each other to be completely free of any judgment or control or critiquing or guidance or advice or anything, and just let them be who they are. It's really important not to give people guidance and advice when they're not asking for it. If you have the desire to give someone guidance or advice when they haven't asked for that, that's actually something in yourself that isn't healed, something you haven't processed. If people ask you for guidance and advice, sure. But if they don't, then it's not your place to give it to them. And it's also not our place to have opinions about other people's thoughts, feelings, and actions. Like I said, if they're not directly and tangibly hurting someone else or stunting another being's survival. And I say directly and tangibly because people can extrapolate, people can complexify things and extrapolate. And what I mean by that is they can decide that, they can think about it and tell, well, the way that you're acting is affecting my emotions, and therefore I have a right to. No, you don't. That's extrapolation. That's controlling, and that's not your place. So the best thing we can do for each other is compassionate support. And the transmutation method has a lot to do with tribal communication, which I'm going to go to in my next video. Tribal communication has to do with just allowing a flow without interruption. Okay, this is how it was. And I've been around all kinds of tribal people from all over the world, not just my family. I was part of a tribal community where people were traveling around from the whole world. I had a piece of property, people camping with me. I met tribal people from all over the world, and Tribal communication has to do with a level of respect where it's like, okay, we're going to put this person is respected. We don't have to know them for them to be respected. They don't have to prove themselves for them to be respected. We are just going to open our heart to respecting this person, which means we aren't going to, scorn them, stigmatize them, question them, put them down, and all of that stuff about not giving guidance and advice. You're just going to let someone be, okay, what is your story? And that is when people say, when you have the floor, when you're on the soapbox. There was that book Lord of the Flies where they talked about having the conch shell. Some tribes people hold a rock. Whatever it is, this person has the focus, because and when that goes into psychology, it's called the wait, what is it called? The patient focused method, as in it's focused on the patient. So and that's what compassion is. So when this person, it's their turn to tell their story, you're listening without judgment, without waiting without sitting there going over all your opinions about everything that they're saying. You're just listening. You're allowing them to have their story. Their story doesn't have anything to do with your opinions, their perspectives, their outlook, their experience. That is theirs, not yours. And when you let them have, when you let them have that, and you embrace it and you say, okay, I listened to you. I don't have any judgments. I don't have any guidance. I don't have any opinions. I just listened to you. And I allowed my perspective to go into your perspective, into your individual universe. And now we have a shared universe. We have shared energy. I didn't need to control it. I didn't need to interrupt it. I didn't need to talk over it. I didn't need to talk about myself in the middle of it or relate it to me. I just listened. Now that is tribal communication. That on the transmutive level of someone being able to talk about their experiences, their conclusions, let them be passionate, let them get angry if they need to. It doesn't matter. And sometimes people are harboring negative emotions. Sometimes people are getting stuck on them. Sometimes people are looping them. But sometimes people are just needing to express them and feel that level of community in order to reach a level of healing, because they need help being walked down into the darkness in order to be able to face the vulnerability of those things and the truth of how they felt from those experiences, so that they can bring lost parts of themselves into the light, so that they can gradually go into, at their own comfort, into a low vibration, because the healing processes of the body are on a low vibration. The strengthening processes of the body are on a high vibration. But then you have to go into a low vibration in order to rest, sleep, heal, go into extremely deep levels of relaxation. To be able to heal on deep levels requires a slow, focused, low vibration. Now, if you're being intense when you're at that low vibration and you're maintaining on an angry, intense level, that is harmful. And that's the negativity we need to avoid. But if we are slowly and gradually taken through a story within ourselves or hearing it from someone else, that is a healing vibration. And that up opens up our frequency to being able to release those negative vibrations, to be able to release those low vibrations. And then we have to slowly work our way up through the coping process into the high vibrations again. Once we have healing, have rest, have rejuvenation, have renewal, have conclusion, and have a time of space, then we can go back into the strengthening again. And that's the constant infinity that we need to go through.